Thank you so much, Joe, for joining the We Don't Play podcast show today. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me today.
That's good. Anytime. It's a pleasure having you, and I'm excited to talk about, books, authorship, and anything that requires print. Let me put it that way. A lot of people love to read. Reading is always going to be something we're always going to have. Nobody ever knows everything because we're always in learning mode. So I would love for people to learn about you and, just get to know, how did you get to this point you are in today?
Yeah, so mine came to me by accident. COVID happened, and I'm a business owner by trade, and a lot of my work is done in the government affairs realm. I'm a lobbyist for defense and technology companies in Washington, D.C., and when the pandemic kind of really exploded, all of my work was shut down for over a year.
Wow.
And writing was on my bucket list of things to do. I'd always enjoyed it when I was younger and enjoyed it when I was in high school and college, but got away from it. And the kind of writing and communications I do on a daily basis was, in a way satisfied that need and that hunger to do it. It was all nonfiction. I'm writing speeches and policy papers and grants and, contracts with the federal and state governments. But I've always wanted to write fiction professionally. And then when everything shut down, I decided to take that time and write that novel. And so I used it as sort of a silver lining. And I ended up going and getting it published. And that went from one book to now what is 4 books and on to a potential second series after that. So it's really taken off. And, I've enjoyed every moment of it. And it's something that if continues to go as well as it's going, my hope is I can transition entirely out of my day job and make writing my day job.
Wow. Now that you've mentioned it about day job and having it as your full-time passion and actual work that you want to do, some people get to ask, how can you monetize or even commercialize fiction? Is there anything that you would think of? Does it go into film? Does it go into poetry? Like, what is the track that people should think about being on?
Right. So as an entrepreneur myself, when I'm asked that question, I always tell other authors and aspiring authors that they need to treat their work, even though it's art to them, treat it as a business. Look at it from the science side as opposed to the art side. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is what you just drove at. In order to become a full-time author or poet or artist, anything, any kind of entertainment, you need to be selling. And if you look at it in those ways, how can I market myself? How can I advertise my wares? How am I able to do things? And so if you look at opportunities like that you've given to me today on this podcast to reach your audience, and people that might not even read my stuff might find what I'm saying intriguing and go out and buy book 1. And if they fall in love with it, they'll buy books 2, 3, and 4, right? Or, in my case, what happened with me was I found a video game company that is turning my Warminster Saga, the 4-book series, into an augmented reality and virtual reality video game that'll be launched in 2024. Again, a way of monetizing it. And so if you're aggressive and you look at yourself as you are the brand, you as the author are the brand of your product, and the books are your product. That's what your widget is. You're making something that someone wants to buy, even though I hate to look at it that way, because I look at it as a great story that's going to entertain people. But at the end of the day, if I don't sell many of those, it won't make a difference to you. I won't be able to do this full time.
Right.
And so part of this is really bearing down. And so what I do is I go to conventions, I go to book signings at bookstores, I go to book signings at libraries. I take on as many podcasts and radio interviews as possible. I have my own YouTube channel. I try to be aggressive, and I'm treating it in the same way I would treat my other businesses. And it's a transactional thing. And even if someone buys the book and doesn't like it, that still counts, right? So I've gotten bad reviews and great reviews, and it's just something that comes along with the business, right? You're going to get people look at you, whether you're a football player and you dropped a pass, and people say, "Oh, that guy stinks," or you write it. Like I had someone give me a 5-star review on novel 1 and a 2-star review on novel 2, and they thought it was just like I was buying time between the next novel, and it wasn't. And meanwhile, the better rated of the two books was my second novel. And it's, you see, everybody has their own opinion, and you just have to look at it as a way of entertaining people. But it has to be a business. If you take it seriously that way, you just can't cast it out there. I mean, if you're an indie author, 80,000 new pieces of work get printed every month on Amazon. So how do you compete against it? That's a sea of competition. And even though I'm a traditionally published author, there are aspects of what I do that's somewhat indie. Like, I have a very small publishing house that can't afford to put me onto TV shows and into magazines and get me into the big stores in New York City. I have to do that for myself. So I grind it just like it would be a startup business, if I'm looking at it in those respects. And so my piece of advice to authors and aspiring authors is to do just that. Treat it as a business and realize if you really want to do this full time, in order to do that, your books have to make money. So, there's lots of things that you can do to get there, and I just offered a few.
Thank you so much for that. A lot of people think about reviews, and when you have a bad review, it's like, oh, you're about to destroy my business. But but I also think it's the way you respond to the review that also shows PR-wise, quote unquote, how you really care about the person's thoughts and their opinions,
I 100% agree. And I mean, and to your point, I would also add to that 2-star review is more valuable than someone that didn't review it at all. The reviews they move algorithms. So even if you gave me all 1 and 2-star reviews and I got 500 of them, Amazon's going to say, hey, read his book because I'm selling books, and people care enough to leave a review, right? And so if you have 3 5-star reviews, it won't make a difference because you don't have enough. So algorithmically, and again, that's a sort of a business point, these artificially intelligent systems are going to promote you because more people are reading you. And that's what they want. Now, you don't, as an author, ever want to see a 1 or a 2-star review, but you're right. You have to have a thick skin. You have to treat this as, hey, even though this is my baby, someone isn't going to like it. And I'll give you a perfect example of one. I had a woman one time leave me a 2-star review, and she said, I wanted to love this book. I bought it for its cover, and I just couldn't get through the first 50 pages, did not finish, 2 stars. And that's what she left. Now, my books average about 4 to 5 stars. I mean, I've got plenty of reviews that cancel out those 1s and 2s, but they happen. And for the first 10 seconds, I did exactly what you said. That personal, it's like, this is my baby. You're insulting my child. How could you do that? And then at the end of the day, when that vitriol kind of burns off, you're like, well, what can I learn from this? And you have to have a thick skin. And what I learned from it was, even though she didn't like the book, she bought it off the shelf because she liked the cover. So the cover did it. It was the one piece, that one nugget that was golden in that review was, even though she didn't like the book, she bought it, so the cover did its job. So my other covers need to look like that so other people buy it too. And even though it's sort of a backhanded compliment, it was still a compliment. You just have to look for that and just get better at it. And I've had folks come up to me at conventions and tell me what characters they like and don't like, why they like them, why they don't like them. And you're right, you have to listen to that because you want to listen to your readership. You want to respond to them because you want them to continue to read. And if they like a certain character, maybe you should give them a little bit more airtime, as in the book. Or if they I had one person say to me at a convention, please don't kill this character. I love him. He's your Boba Fett. And meanwhile, it's like, I know that character is going to die. I've already actually written it. You know what I mean? But it's like, it makes sense in the story, but then you find these so the way you satisfy that is you write an origin story about that character, or you write a side story about that character, and you put those in like in a short story or a novella form and take it out of my epic fantasy. And that way they can still enjoy the character, even though they know the ultimate fate of the character. And sometimes, how Hollywood is. Sometimes the end isn't always the end too. So there are ways that you can call characters back and do certain things, especially in a fantasy adventure realm where I am, where magic rules the world, or sci-fi where you could be a robot or whatever. There's plenty of ways to sort of regenerate or resurrect those characters if they're that super popular. So I look at it in those terms too.
So true. Now that you mentioned this, I'm so happy that you brought it up, because those feedback reports that you get consistently allow you to know what to focus on and what to work on. Because like you said, with the cover, people love the cover. It's like, if you think about it, like YouTube thumbnails, people like the YouTube thumbnail, they click on the video and they're like, I'm out, because this is not what I wanted. But it's the same thing with the book too. And some people get to ask themselves, okay, how do I make my cover so pleasing? Because whenever you think about someone buying a book, they're not buying the book because of the content at first sight. They're buying it because of how it looks or how it would look on their shelf. But now the content also has to support that title. But because the title is strong, or the cover is strong, or the design is even strong in itself, then it means that the content within has to match up. And sometimes it doesn't. But how do people balance that if somebody really wants to know how to create that equilibrium?
Yeah, well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. You know, when, just think of yourself. If you wander into your local Barnes and Noble, the first thing you need to do as an author is, even though you might have a cover in mind, oftentimes your cover, you just need to make sure that your cover screams your genre, right? So if I'm going in there and I'm looking for something that's a fantasy adventure book, there are certain things in my head that I want to see. I want to see a font or a color scheme, or I want to see a dragon, or I want to see a sword or a crown or something like that. And if I see something that doesn't match that, that looks more like a romance or a different kind of novel, like a cozy, mystery, I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to gloss over it. And the thing that you want them to do is grab that book off of the shelf and look at that cover, or do the same thing. Make sure that your covers on any distribution channel are seeable in that thumbnail. So when you're looking at it, when you look at my cover, you can kind of see what's going on in the background. You're like, ooh, it's jarring. You get these eyes coming from this cloud. It looks ominous, and the colors kind of scream, fantasy adventure. And you want that because you want people to click on that and then go, what do you do when you're standing, you look at the book and you're like, oh, this cover grabbed my attention. The next thing you do, you flip it over and you read the blurb, right? Mm-hmm. And on the back, if you have an author or somebody that can offer a quote that says how great the book is, or a review you want to put on there, and then you read that 250 word blurb, and you can't summarize 140,000 words in 250. You just can't do it. But that blurb has got to get you to flip it open and say, you know what, this reads like, I like the cover, it screams to me, I turned it over, I read it, now I'm going to go buy it. And the same thing happens when you go to Amazon. We create word clouds, and in those word clouds you want to say things that people are familiar with. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you an example of that. I had one piece in the last 2 years. I've had one piece of social media go viral, and it got over 275,000 views. And it wasn't the book, it wasn't the cover release, it wasn't any of the news that was coming out of that. It was the guy who had done my book, like my book promo, and he had put this thing together with all sorts. He was a cinematographer. He put it together with all this sort of like sci-fi effect to it. It looked really good. And if you clicked on it, you watched it, you walked away thinking, "Oh man, I'm gonna go buy that book." It looked like a movie preview. That's how cool it was. And he got about 5,000 or 6,000 views on it, and I was ecstatic. I was like, "That's great." He did a making of the video, and he hashtagged it Harry Potter Castle. And it got 275,000 views because people, oh, it's a Harry Potter castle. I want to see how this guy made it. And all it did was drive people to my site so that they can watch my video and learn about my books. And my books are not Harry Potter castles. They're pretty medieval, it's a dark fantasy kind of thing. And even though it was on, but people respond to those kinds. So that in that blurb, you want to pounce on people. You want to throw words at them that they like to see. Like harrowing and excitement and adventure and words like that. Use those in your blurb, even though it might not be 100% accurate as what's in your book. Same thing with your cover. What's on the cover doesn't have to be anywhere in the book. It just has to grab your attention to sell it. And so those are the pieces of advice I would offer to authors. And I say this all the time because I'm in business. Know what you know, and definitely know what you don't know. And if you don't know it, get someone that does know it to do it. And I am not an illustrator. I don't know what my covers need to look like, but my publisher and my illustrator do. So when they come back and say, "What do you like at this?" And I say, "Well, is it going to sell books?" I don't care if I like it or not. I want the people that are going to read my stuff to like it. Now, ultimately, I do like my covers. I get compliments on them all the time, and they're just like, "Oh, great job on your cover," and I'm like, I had nothing to do with it. But I'll take the compliment anyway.
Right.
And it's fun, but that's, I think, how getting back to your original point, how someone who's putting together a book that needs to market it needs to take that piece of advice. I mean, I think it's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's really what keeps people going and keeps people coming back for more, because that's where that connection starts to bring in the livelihood of them saying, okay, I like this book, I like what I'm reading, let me share it with someone and let's see how it goes. Some people still have this attachment to hardcover copies. Some people are already used to Kindles, and you see what I'm saying?
This guy right here.
Right.
I'm one of those.
Yeah. Some people have this thing.
I'm a cheater though. Like I do audiobooks in the car or on a plane, and ebooks every now and then. I download ebooks just to have them, because I have that little collection gene somewhere in me. But I love hardbacks. I love them.
And it's a good thing, because a lot of people don't think they still exist or help, and because there's this new generation that I'll just flip it on my digital copy and it feels good. But if you have that cover, you highlight it, you can bookmark it, it feels like you are in the book, like the book is part of your day.
Well, that's well said. It's part. You're right. I feel that way. In fact, I have a little bit of obsessive compulsive disorder. And whenever I read a book I like, I always buy the paperback first. And if I like the paperback, I'll go out and buy the hardback and never open it up. And I just display it in my library, because I don't want it to be screwed up. But that's almost my weird way of memorializing or celebrating that book. And then I'll read that paperback over and over and over again until it's all dog-eared and falling apart, because that's what I do. Now, I've transitioned a lot of that to ebooks. That's the way it goes. It's easier to read when you're on a plane, or you don't have to carry anything because you got your computer or you have your cell phone with you at all times.
Right.
You never miss that. But I'll tell you what, man, I never thought I'd be into audiobooks. And you get the right voice or voices in an audiobook, and it can really open your eyes to a story that you might have read differently. Or especially if you listen to an audiobook after you've read a book, and you're like, wow, the story takes on a whole other turn to it. And so I've enjoyed those processes too.
Now that you've said audiobooks, ebooks, hard copies, and paperbacks, if someone is thinking about a budget for a release, is there I wouldn't say there's a fixed price, because every industry is different, but would there be a budget that would have to consider pre, post, based on marketing? There's so many angles. It's like releasing a song or music video. How much would somebody have to spend realistically and feasibly to make that impact holistically?
Yeah, let me break that down for you. So again, I'm not an indie author, but I'm close to it, right? You might, like I mentioned before, my publishing house is relatively small, so there are some costs that I burden because I want a superior product that they wouldn't necessarily do.
Okay.
And what I've found is editing is well worth the money, and I know that the going rate is about 3 cents a word. So for a book like mine, it can be relatively expensive. When I'm putting 140,000 words on paper, and you go through several rungs of editing. Some editors, if you work with them in the past, they'll offer you a flat rate, and I've seen that range anywhere between $1,200 to $3,000 or $4,000, depending on the editor and who they are. Right? So I would budget for that, or find someone that's willing to edit it for you that you trust, who knows what they're doing, because there's several. There's a development edit, which is really poking holes in the story, saying where you're missing this and I don't understand how these connected. That's one kind of edit. And then you got that copy edit, which is like a line edit for grammar and you use a word too many times and things like that, and that's tedious. But you've got to do those, and they ultimately come out. So my budgets for those are somewhere between $300 and $4,500 per book if you're paying for premium rates. Now you can find people through like Upwork and Fiverr and other places like that that'll do it at a minimum, or they'll give you a flat rate, and I would negotiate with them if you can. The cover design, I don't know how to do that if I wanted to. Now there are some folks out there that use Canva or BookBrush or other things where you can go in and you can buy a pre-made cover for $50 or $85.
Okay.
And then you can change the language on it, things like that. So that's much more affordable. But I also find that, you get value in what you invest in. And if you do find an illustrator, especially one that knows your genre and has helped to sell books in your genre, pay them that couple $100. Like my illustrator, it's usually $300 or $350, per cover, and that includes the spine design and the back design.
Oh.
And then, I would also suggest, if you're doing a series like I'm doing, make sure you're using the same illustrator so they can coordinate color schemes and they know what the font needs to look like and things like that too. If you have a one-off, you can change that whenever you want to change it and make it work. And then the last piece is distribution, right? Like, what are you planning on doing as an indie? Oftentimes you're putting these things into Amazon or a handful of distribution channels, pushing them through there, and you can decide for yourself, is this something that I want to sell at 99 cents or $4.99 or $19.99, depending on what you want to do.
Right.
So you're sort of setting the bar there, but then you can also budget what they're taking out of you based on Amazon fees. And then lastly, if you decide to go in the realm of audiobooks, and you could find voiceover talent that will range, and there are folks out there that are like what I would say, talent is more affordable for indie authors, where I've seen it done for only a couple $100, and then they're taking royalties on the back end. In other cases, I've seen just a straight up fee where you pay someone several $1,000s, they go into a studio for you, and they provide you with the end product. And so it depends on how much you want to spend. If you're on a budget, you can do all that stuff for just $1,000 or $2,000. If you've got a budget to spend, whether it's through your publisher or whether it's through your own investment in your own work, you could spend up to $10,000 and really make it kick butt. But that's up to everybody, and not everybody has that opportunity to do that. And I would suggest people work within their own means and negotiate as best they can to get the best rates for themselves.
True. Thank you so much for that. I think a lot of people have an idea to know, because some people ask, should I just do self-publishing on Amazon directly, or should I go to a platform like blurb.com so that I can get it done through a third party? What would you say?
So I think that there's a couple of cautionary tales that I would offer to that. So, and I guess the true answer to your question is that it depends on what outcome they're looking for. For example, if you just wrote something and you just want to get it out there and you don't care if you're making money at it, you just want to share your art with somebody else. Yeah. Then go as free as you can, right? And if you want to promote it, great, promote it. If you're serious about it and you want to promote it because you want to turn this into a career and make money at it, then I think investing in finding yourself like a publication services company, one that's out there that has the ability to help you with formatting and editing and cover design and blurbs and social media and marketing, and they'll do your audiobook for you and all this kind of wraparound services. There are groups out there like Blurb or more than a handful of others that will give you the opportunity to do those things for you, but then you're going to pay them, and you're either going to pay them in the form of a small fee and a higher royalty take, because then they're putting skin in the game too. When the book sells, they're making money, and so they're going to promote it just as much as you're promoting it. Or the other way around, where you're paying them a lot up front, they don't own any of the book, and you own all that's coming out, but then you get these professional services that wrap around what you're doing and put together a very legitimate product that you can be proud of, but that you own wholly, and then it's up to you whether or not you're able to market it the way you want to. And then the last way is going the traditional publishing route, which takes a lot of that stuff off the table. Yeah. Right. If you query a publisher and or an agent and they could find you a book deal, you're going to give a lot away in royalties, but a lot of those headaches go away. They're going to dictate what your cover looks like. They're going to dictate where you're going to go on convention tours. They're going to dictate lots of other things. But to those indie authors, I would decide, hey, do you have a group of people around you that you can depend on to do these services at a reasonable rate, or do you want to make a little bit more of an investment in it, even if you have to save up a little bit to get it done the best way, and get that done because you think it'll help you sell your books better. And that's the piece of advice I'd leave for them.
Thank you so much. I think that allows them to pretty much get the facts right before they, invest or fully commit. Because when you don't really do your research and you just go with what flies around, you don't really get the best results because you don't really know what's working and what to stick with. So that's a really good idea.
100% agree. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. This is definitely one of those episodes a lot of people who are author based are going to literally take in this information and learn.
Yeah. Well, I hope I could be informative. I mean, that's part of it. And, you know, I learned this because other people were kind enough to give me free advice when they didn't have to. But the one thing I found that's different from politics than authorship is that in politics, this is a zero-sum game. Everybody's your enemy, right? And you sometimes align with people, and then other times you align against them. And no one wants to help you there. You got to find that, figure it out. It's really Darwinism at its best, right? Or its worst. Here, it's a pay it forward kind of thing. Like, people want to see you succeed.
Yeah.
Even if they're authors that technically are competing against you because their book is next to yours on the same shelf, they still help you. And it's more communal and it's more friendly. And they want you to be just as successful as you can be, and then you try to help each other. And it feels much more like a sharing community, and one that, you know, I'm not used to. And I've learned, and the one thing I did learn was, look, if I'm going to learn a piece of, I'm not going to be stingy and save it for myself. I'll share it with other people so they don't make the same mistakes I did. So
true. And you know, with knowledge, that's the beauty about books. Because if you have a podcast, I have a podcast. You have a book, I have a book. We're learning. We're not really, it's not market share related. It's interest based related. So if you like this better than that, and like you said with the voiceovers, you prefer this voice than that, you maybe want a Dark Vader voice, or you want another type of voice, you know, it's really up to you. But at the end of the day, it's, are you gaining the knowledge? Are you learning something new? And are you taking away something that you can apply outside what you're learning? So that's the major benefit, and I appreciate you for giving us that holistic experience, which allows people to feel more confident, and they're like, oh, somebody else wrote the book, or somebody else talked about this, so why would they listen to me? But now you're showing that it's possible to share the same shelf and still be able to give your truth and let people understand what your business is all about.
Great. Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Anytime. I'm sure some people may want to connect with you, learn from you, even read, you know, your editions. Where can they find all this information?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. So if you go to JV Hilliard, that's HILLIARD.com, you'll find my website. My social medias, if you like TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter, I'm at JV Hilliard Books. If you like Facebook and Discord, I'm just JV Hilliard, and I've got my own YouTube channel. You can find me at JV Hilliard Books on there too. So pretty easy to find, and joe@jvhilliard.com is my email address. Feel free to email me and ask me any questions you might have, and I'd be more than happy to answer them if I can. And yes, I do hope you come to my website and buy my books and like them.
Definitely. That'll be a great add-on as well. Thank you so much, JV. I appreciate you, and I look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to take the time on your show. I appreciate the opportunity.
Anytime.